Alright, so having done your HTML and got your the structure of your application ready to go, it's now time to making sure that your the link to your CSS file has been created correctly, so that the name you're using for your CSS file is the same name used in the href attribute of your linked tag there. Coming to my CSS, so I've used a similar color scheme to what I've used in the previous project, the area of a rectangle. So you can do that. You can certainly play around with this a lot as well. But you'll notice that the major things that we've done is starting with styling the body, remembering that with CSS you style the big things first and get down into more fine-grained detail and styling the further you go down in your CSS file. That's the conventions. I've styled the body tag, given it a margin and a background color and a font color, and using a font family, then styling the table tag, which is a fairly major attribute or element of this application, given it some padding. So if you're using Aptana, also make use of these little tips that come up. If you when you use your mouse and hover over a CSS element, you'll see that like padding tells us it specifies the amount of space between the content of an element and its border. So effectively what that means is padding controls the amount of space between an element, say like this text box, and the border of the cell around it. Okay, so if I was to come to my data CSS rule, which is the one that I'm using to style this cell and this cell here, and I decide that I want to increase the padding, give it a bit more space around the cell. So currently I'm only using 2. If I change that to 10 and I save that and refresh, see I get a whole bunch more space now, this green space, because that's filling in between the element, which is my text box, and the border around the cell. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of padding. That's what padding does. Border spacing does a similar thing, but it's between the border and my element. So if I point to it, it tells me specifies the number of pixels between the border and its contents. So it does a similar sort of thing, but it's particularly looking at the border. So you notice I've gone through and have styled everything that had a major element. I've styled the th attribute element, which applies the styling to this height heading, this base heading, and this area heading here, so giving it their own color, so they're all getting the same styling. Anywhere where I used the header class, which is again on these 3 elements, giving it a little bit of extra styling, so that's my color and my bold. Where I've used the data class, so I've used the data class on these areas here where the text boxes are and the green background color, so that's getting that, picking those up and giving those some unique styling. Any input elements, which are these 2 text boxes here, so I'm making the text align in the center of those, so that when the user types in, it centers that text. So it's just a nice little design feature rather than have it over on the left here. The image tag is getting its own bit of styling, a little bit of extra spacing and vertically centering in that cell, so that it looks nice and nice and centered in that in its space there. And then the result, which is this pink area down here, so the result class from my HTML is getting its own styling down here. So you can certainly choose your own styles and colors and so on for this application, but these are just the ones that I'm using. And then I've styled the button as well. So here's my button here. It had a button class applied to it in the HTML, so it's getting its own little bit of styling there as well. And that's pretty much the CSS rules that I've used. So you can certainly use my CSS rules, or you can take them and modify them, or you can add extra ones as well. So you can please yourself there. But when you're done with your HTML and your CSS, you should have an application ready for us to apply some JavaScript code to it.